Hello, I'm Sean Lim, and welcome to After 10. Just a generation ago, U.S.-Soviet relations had the world on edge, but now it's a dynamic between the United States and China that has the world paying attention. On tonight's After 10, we explore why Korea is so focused on this new superpower dynamic. Stay with us. U.S. President Barack Obama and Chinese President Xi Jinping hold their first summit talks. China suggested a new model of cooperation to the U.S. to change the dynamic of bilateral relations. U.S.-China relations have taken a different path. The two nations are now promoting economic cooperation, pursuing active foreign policies, and conducting joint military drills. Now is the time for the Park Geun-hye administration to balance out diplomatic relations between the U.S. and China, two of Korea's biggest partners in a variety of fields. On today's After 10, we take a deeper look at the changing dynamic of U.S.-China relations and discuss what kind of diplomatic strategy Korea should take. Well, Professor Jung, thank you so much for joining us tonight on After 10.
Thank you very much for inviting me here.
So we're talking about U.S.-China relations. For those of us who haven't really been paying much attention to U.S.-China relations, what has changed in that partnership or dynamic?
Everybody started to say that the nature of the relationship between two countries started to be changed drastically. I think simply because of the rise of China in its economic power. As we all know that China has become number 2 economy in the world, and that it maintains a large number of the population, and that actually it has a large size of the land as well, and then it started to be active in its own politics with the neighboring countries. So all of the things started to change some sort of landscape where China and the U.S. used to be. So this has led to some sort of issues that the China started to have interest in, meaning that the China want to play a more important role, and then that has pushed China to think about building the new relation with the United States. So make it simple, it used to be that from U.S. point of view, China used to matter of the containment. So China should remain as it used to be. But now the nature of the relation between two countries has become like a more cooperation-oriented, more partnership-based oriented, simply because, as I said, China has grown so fast. So there have been a lot of changes.
So we've seen many stories about how China's economic growth has developed very rapidly. It used to be that when we were looking at the superpowers, it was United States and the Soviet Union. Then after the Soviet Union collapsed, it was just the United States by itself. And suddenly, it seems we're really having to analyze U.S. and China relations as a superpower unit. When did this unit really start to emerge?
Well, I mean, back to 2006, we started to hear something about the G2 concept. That's about the 2006. Some of the U.S. scholars to mention that China is rising. And if we trace back to the some sort of the magazines like Times, you can see that on the front page, China is rising. But more formally, I think it was the year 2009 when the President Obama and Hu Jintao met together in the G20 summit meeting. Then the President Obama started to mention specifically about the important relation between the United States and then China. And then it is more like the point when the two governments started to mention about the concept of the G2. So this is around the 2009. So we are now in 2013. So it's not that long time ago when we started to talk about the G2.
So each side seems to have its vision for what this new dynamic is going to be like. Can you tell us how each side views itself and how they view the pair?
Well, I mean, even if it is true that some sort of the landscape that you have in terms of interpreting the nature of the relation between two countries have been changed. But I think these days, a lot of people start to say that actually China and the United States try to have a new vision on the more constructive relationship between two countries. I think this initiative was made mainly by China. In other words, from China's perspective, it wants to be more influential, not only in Northeast Asia, but in Asia general, also possibly at the global level. So to do so, China first needs to change the dynamic with the United States in this region. So then China probably looked at the past when the Soviet Union challenged the United States, but they got into conflict and then the Soviet Union lost the game. And China doesn't want to repeat that pattern. So China brought some sort of unique suggestion, meaning that we're going to build a new model of the great powers relationship. Meaning that it is based on cooperation, not based on the competition. We should work together on the various issues, and so that truly China and the United States can work together. By the way, from the U.S. point of view, I'm not sure to what extent the U.S. has really understood that this is necessary. It's more like, as I said, China-driven, but the U.S. has responded to China's initiative to some extent. So U.S. for now has been responding to what the China has been asking to do together. It's based on the friendship and cooperation, apparently.
So it seems as if the U.S. initially has this framework of what realists would call this realpolitik kind of perspective where China is a threat, but then China's moves recently has been gesturing in a more friendly manner to say, don't be afraid of us, we'll rise together. But do you really think that's how they will eventually perceive each other, or should the U.S. also still be a little bit skeptical about some of these friendly gestures?
Well, I would bet the U.S. would be ultimately a little bit skeptical about this nature of the relation because from my understanding, I don't have any single precedent where I can find a similar dynamics. When we had Pax Britannica and we used to have a Pax Americana, and all the dynamics from the past history tells us that there was the big powers and they struggled with each other, and then one power won the game, and then they made a paved a new way, and then so another dynamic was unfold. So I would bet that it's going to be difficult if you were talking about the realist point of view that power struggles. So that's what the realists say. So in the sense that they can work together for now, but in the end they need to find a way how they have to handle the other side for their best interest of its own.
So you yourself are not a realist. So in what way would it benefit the U.S. to actually respond genuinely to these gestures from China?
Well, because I can list some of the common interests, and then I can frame that as a matter of the sharing the common goods. So common goods meaning that you can provide every benefit by yourself. You build that someone else with someone else. In the meantime, you can enjoy your benefits. But when you start to feel that these goods do not have any values left, then you might think of something differently, meaning that tries to make another common goods, public goods that you can enjoy.
So these two economies, these two countries, they are entwined already. So their common goods path has already been set pretty much right now. It's a bit difficult to escape from that. Nevertheless, there are some issues that China does have with territories, with other allies of the U.S., for example, the Diaoyu Islands dispute with Japan and the South China Sea dispute with the Philippines. And we've seen, going back to your reference to the past, that conflicts with allies can drive sort of larger conflicts between superpowers. Do you think we're at some sort of threat in that area?
Well, I mean, this special dynamic in the Southeast Asia will pretty much depend upon how United States would perceive this area from the strategic point of view. If United States really think that this area would be important to handle the issues related to China for the best interest of the United States, then they might be a little bit more aggressive, meaning that assisting and then providing some sort of resources to back up some of the South Asian countries who might be in a conflict and disputes with China. If the United States would think that, okay, in the meantime, then we can go along with China, maybe they can, for the time, pull back from this situation by themselves and then tries to maintain the status quo as it is. And then that I don't think no matter what would happen, the United States would recognize, okay, these are the territory of China. I don't think that would happen. But as long as China can understand and the United States understand under some of the situation where they can enjoy their best interest, the best benefits, then why not the United States can go with that situation.
So do you think this U.S. pivot to Asia comes from a place where they don't want to be left behind in the Pacific century, or does it come from a place where they want to make sure that they're going to have an eye on China and what they're doing?
Well, I mean, U.S. basic stance is that they are a superpower. So they have to decide the basic dynamic in East Asia, including Northeast Asia and then South Asia. So as long as the U.S. would feel that they would remain influential in terms of maintaining the balanced power according to the realist term, then it would be okay. So I think so in that sense, China has become very important variable in the context of the U.S. interest. So U.S. will keep its eyes on how to handle this. And as I said, for now, what China is suggesting to the United States is okay with the United States because it's not something that China would like to aggressively change the situation. So why not with the U.S.?
So for many years, it was very clear in terms of being in Korea what these relations meant between the superpowers. But now we have the U.S. as the closest ally for Korea, and then China is the largest trading partner for Korea. These approaches to the superpowers seem to be mixed, where it's not just one side or the other. How should we here in Korea start to adapt our vision to this?
Well, Korea, we don't have to be a follow. China is the largest trading partner with Korea, but that doesn't necessarily mean that China doesn't have interest in Korea. China must have a big interest in Korea. Many people don't know this simple fact that between the Korea and China, a weekly flight number is 800. Between the China and Japan, 700. Between China and the United States, 200. So meaning that the government has not influence on this figure, meaning that naturally two countries are interdependent. Strategy-wise, Korea has been a long time ally with the United States, and I think this political dynamic will remain as an also important thing. So from Korea's point of view, our vision is that we're going to be a facilitator in this region to maintain peace and prosperity. And there are many ways for us to be able to do so. I think having this vision will only help Korea to have a better room to play in this very difficult dynamic in Northeast Asia.
Well, speaking of the dynamics here in Northeast Asia, let's talk about North Korea. Many say that China's approach towards North Korea changed with Kim Jong-un's succession to power. How do you feel China is changing the dynamics on the peninsula?
Well, indeed, I think that we can recognize that China's stance toward North Korea has been really changed. Before, what China most concerned about is to maintain stability in the Korean peninsula. Then China wanted to talk about the denuclearization in North Korea. But around the time when we started to have a Cheonam accident, China started to change their position softly, and now obviously, meaning that China posed more importance on denuclearization of North Korea, then China can talk about stability in Korean peninsula. In other words, China would not allow North Korea to any further action to develop their nuclear weapons. So this is getting more clearer. So this will change a lot of dynamics in the Korean peninsula.
So how do you see the six-party talks progress right now? Many people say that it's going to be too early to rush to talks, to have talks for talk's sake, but China seems to be very keen on getting everyone back to the table.
Right. From China's point of view, as I said, that this new foreign policy of China will naturally require some sort of more engagement because they emphasize the cooperation and partnership and then other good things. So it's good for everybody to talk each other. So it really makes sense with China's basic stance. And then China should talk to United States, hey, you should come back to six-party talk so that based on our cooperative network relationship, then we can handle North Korea issues. But from the U.S. point of view, I'm not sure to what extent that they can be that much cooperative on this idea. And then after the recent visit of the two important high-level officials of the State Department of the United States, as somebody, some of the experts expected, U.S. said that they are a little bit reluctant to go back to six-party talk at this time. So there are certainly some gaps, So from China's point of view, China tries to bring North Korea, issue into the table of six-party talk, actually, which mainly happened, many times in China. But from United States point of view, it's too early for United States to participate in that regard.
So how does President Park's trust-building process work within this new U.S. China dynamic?
Well, as we all know, that President Park Geun-hye emphasized the importance, especially DMZ Peace Park project, no matter where she would go, when she met President Obama and Xi Jinping and other summits in Europe this time, she emphasized her idea of building the DMZ Peace Park. This is a wonderful idea because you can bring some sort of neutral and more soft issues to deal with a very stunned situation, meaning that DMZ issues, which is the legacy of the Cold War. So idea-wise, this is very good. But as we saw from the Kaesong Industrial Park case, North Korea would not open up their border immediately, even if there will be some incentive carrots. From North Korea's point of view, it's a matter of same as if it would open up, give up the border, because it's a matter of the DMZ. DMZ has been regarded as the key issues for North Korea to handle not only South Korea but also other rest part of the world. So here, the starting point to deal with the issues in the context of the Korean Peninsula peace building process is that you have to handle nuclear issues first with North Korea. Unless North Korea is already flexible with the nuclear issue, meaning that denuclearization, then they would not give up their border, meaning the DMZ part. Also, other Korean Peninsula peace building process is related to all these nuclear issues. So, thinking about the Kaesong Industrial Park case, when the South Korean government was very much about the Kaesong Industrial Park issue, North Korea was still talking sometimes about nuclear weapons. So it is interrelated. So every Korean Peninsula peace building process is related to traditional security issues. But in the meantime, while we handle this security part a little bit more and better, then we will have a better chance actually to deal with these softer issues. And this issue will bring more, opportunities for us to handle, these hard issues that is difficult to handle. So it's interrelated. And then to handle everything, then we need to have a grand vision on the handling the both hard and the soft security issues.
Well, if the U.S. and China become friendlier, wouldn't that make North Korea more adamant about securing its own position by holding on to its nuclear capabilities?
Yeah, for North Korea, they will hold the nuclear capabilities more and more. So the cooperation between China and the United States should focus on denuclearization. That's what I'm saying. Unless you can handle this issue, then the North Korea would not move any further. So the question is, how can you do it? In this sense that maybe China would like to make an influence a little bit more than before, and then unless China provides some sort of incentives, political, economic incentives, right. And it's a matter of a symbolic, effect. So that's important. Also, North Korea, as we all know, is starving. So they also need some economic incentives. thinking about Security Council resolution, we all know that no matter what kind of sanction has been posed against North Korea, there is an exception. That's a humanitarian relief. This provision itself is about China's providing some sort of business opportunities to North Korea. So there is all the time the open window, and this specific provision it has been all the time supported by China. So China has been influencing to a large extent with North Korea. And then question is how these two G2s, China and the United States, can work together and bring more incentives and influences toward North Korea so that we can handle the Korean Peninsula issues ultimately.
And speaking of the inter-Korean peninsula issues that may get resolved one day, in terms of unification, North and South Korea has always been this buffer zone between China and the U.S. And in a way, the status quo has served as a way to keep the two powers apart. But do you think that things are changing where that will become less necessary in the future?
Well, unless the two Koreas really want to be reunified, it will be difficult to see that. Thinking about every possibilities, the best option scenario will be that you want to have a buffer zone. You don't want to face between China and the United States. So, even for Japan, it's better for them to have two Koreas. So unless two Koreas are really eager to be unified or at least to become closer, it's going to be very difficult.
So I've heard that refrain as well, that has to be led by people here in Korea if we want reunification. The rest of the world is not so unhappy with the way things are as long as it stays stable. Do you think it is in our best interest to move towards unification? For South Korea and the world?
That's what we were born, I think. As a Korean national, I don't think any Korean would think that it would not be a good idea to be unified. Because it's not a matter of the economic calculation. It's a matter of sharing the same blood. It's sharing the same culture, sharing the same language. So even if we have some sort of difficult family to handle, but it's a family, so family should live together. So that's the issue that we have.
So what kind of strategy should Korea take to balance itself in between this changing dynamic between the U.S. and China?
In general, or in regard to North Korea?
In general.
In general, as I said, Korea should have a vision of being a facilitator. So even if, as I said, U.S. and China can work together for now, but naturally they will have some issues, and then there will be some list of issues that they will face some confrontation together. So then Korea can actually facilitate discussions between two countries and possibly other countries, and then Korea can play some sort of leadership role. Korea cannot decide issues in front of the China and the United States, but certainly we have good issues. Good capability as a facilitator. So, we always talk about the casting vote things. So Korea can exercise that power as a casting voter between China and the United States. And then Korea has a very good image. If we go out there, then every country, including China and the United States, would think that Korea has been doing good things. And there are several evidences actually in this region where Korea has been facilitating a role a lot.
Well, that's a lot to consider. Thank you so much for sharing your insights tonight with us.
Thank you very much.
And that does it for us tonight on After 10. Join us again next time. We'll see you soon.